what kind of a conversation would I be having with somebody? So what would we be talking about? Or what challenges or stuff that they would be talking about where you would love for your name to pop into my head? And it was like, okay, where can I have these conversations? Who can I talk to? And it's like, what do they say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear? What do you need less of to create space to see what you already know somewhere inside of you? I think it's just the culture we're born in. It's like, oh, well, if you want more, you've got to do more. If you want to be more successful, you've got to do more things. When it actually pulls us away from that place we can be as still as we can be to see what we already know that we need.
Hello, my name is Exile. You are listening to the podcast of Partners in Positivity, the place for deep conversations. So have a goosebumps.
Welcome to P&P, the Partners in Positivity podcast with
Aisling Burnett.
and myself, Sarah Harty. And what is it? It's a place for deep conversations. Today on the podcast, we have a beautiful human from County Mayo. His name is Thomas McCormack, and he is the authenticity coach on Instagram. If you want to check him out, he's here sitting beside us in candlelight in a house in Galway. We were so gratefully invited to have this podcast recorded. So thank you, Thomas, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm going to straight away begin by asking you your definition of authenticity, because it's came up a lot for us over the last couple of years, and I think everyone deep down does want to be authentic, but we all have different interpretations and meanings for it. So what is yours?
What a great banger of a first question. What is it for me? For me, it's like so I guess the way I'll explain it is this way. So all of us, I feel, have our own, we've all got our own fingerprint, and everyone has their own unique fingerprint. There's no two fingerprints the same. So you're born with that. We've got our own soul print. We've got our own like path or journey to kind of go on in this life, and there's many ways it could take place. How the story unfolds isn't as important as the fact that you go on this journey and learn the lessons you've got to learn. And then we're born into whatever situation we're born into. We take up all the things that we believe to be true. You go out into the world, you go out into college, you go out into whatever it might be for you. And then you start to realize, oh, this isn't what I thought X was. Oh, this isn't what I thought that was. And then we start to, that's where I feel, well, we're always emerging. But then we start to emerge, and different places, different times, I think you start to come to this question of kind of the existential question of, who am I? What is this universe thing? And what do I want? Is purpose a thing? Is it real? So for me, authenticity is us being as present as possible with what it is for us, with being living with the tension of what we don't know about ourselves, and being honest about what our current capacity is, which is huge. That was huge when I seen that one time. I used to think that authenticity was you go into a room and you've got to be yourself no matter what, whereas that can do so much harm to us, because there can be parts of us that we're not comfortable with, that when you kind of put out there, people feel it and they question it, not because they're bad people, because they can in some way or form feel your uncomfortableness with that part of yourself. So for me, authenticity is about knowing what part, I guess first of all, you getting to know yourself and what it is, and then making peace with these different parts, and how can I express this part of myself in a way that's real and true? And do I want the rest of the world to know about this part of myself? Is this for me? Is this kind of, where are the spaces that I would feel comfortable being this person in? And it's like, it's a journey. It's like I said to someone else recently, life is a healing journey. And she made a very valid point. Life is it's a harming journey and a healing journey. And we dance between both all the time. We get hurt, we have to figure it out, move through it, and we hurt others, and others have to make sense of how we've hurt them. So it's, I guess, ultimately, I think it's like finding out about, who are we? How would I like to express myself? What's real and true? And I think for me, the capacity piece is huge, because we all different capacities. So, we could be, for example today, three of us sitting around the having this podcast today, we could have had any kind of a morning, but every day this week at this time, we would have had different capacities depending on like so many things. There's countless things. Thinking about them would be more exhausting than actually just being with it. So it's like, well, with where I am at this moment in time, how much of me do I have the capacity to let show up? And then being okay with that. Whereas, yeah, I think that explains it in a kind of a roundabout way. But it's always unfolding, always emerging, and never perfect.
Thanks, Emil Thomas. And I love the way you explained that, because I think definitely for me and the way social media is over the past few years, with people saying that they're living their authentic life, being their authentic self, you have this image in your mind of this big perfect life of where the person is always authentically themselves and, you know, choosing the right things in each moment and really listening to themselves, and just this life of bliss. But I love what you said there, because it just creates total safety. Like, there's parts of yourself that you're going to find, is this my authentic self, and do I want to share that with people? It's even like people on their healing journeys, and they share certain things like of stuff they've overcome. But I often say to people, like, there's two types of people. There's one person that will share it, and then there's one person that will just keep it for themselves, and not everybody has to be the person that's going to share it. So I love that you're saying just keeping those little parts for yourself, because it feels safe.
Exactly. And I know you mentioned about knowing what your spaces are and your capacity within them in your life. And from chatting to other people that I know you very well, you've done a master's recently. You're also within the coaching sphere or industry as a coach and a trainer. And energy is something that you would like to talk about or engage in or work with as well. So is that where your authenticity lies for yourself and what you're up to at this moment? Or is there more to that? Or
Yeah, it's at this moment in time. So it's interesting. So for me, I guess I'm from a family of 10. So the oldest of 8, family of 10. So it's funny, people when we're younger, you know, I think when you're not from a family of 10, I think people fantasize about, oh, I'd love loads of brothers and sisters, because then I would have had all this company, different things. So growing up, there was always a lot of going, because our parents were like, they wanted us to be a part of everything. So like in the best way possible, like, right, we want you to be a part of everything so you can taste everything and make sense for yourselves of what it is you want to do. So that was really good when we were younger. And so a huge part of me was, so for me in primary school, there was a huge, very creative part of myself, very imaginative, loved storytelling, really good at learning. But how I learned and different things, there was no space for. And so without realising it, that kind of part got shut down. So then for so long, I guess, I was like, right, what do I like? And I just veered towards people. Like, man, we were living in a place called Ball in Mayo, and there'd be people like walking by the house, and myself and my brother Shane would be outside, and we'd have them brought in for a cup of tea, and Mum would come in from the line. She'd be two of us, like 4 and 3 or 5 and 4, be sitting down chatting to them about, like, you know, life, whatever life meant for us at that point. So there was kind of, I guess there's all that, and then there was going to secondary school, and there was always a huge part of myself that I would have hidden, but I didn't know. I don't think I ever had that experience reflected or spoke about, or different things that it felt safe to come out. So that's another huge part. Then went to college. That was amazing. Oh, I was like fucking burst of freedom. Remember, I was left down at college the first day. I was like, what the hell is this? It was like so scary, but you knew it was really good. And so then college, the whole freedom, like just chatting to people, chatting. I just spent so much time in the college chatting to people. What else? And that was good. I would organise loads of events when I was in college, and for the college, and then after college would have done it as a career thing, kind of nightclub promoting and stuff. And then, but eventually in that, there was this thing for me of that it ended up becoming, okay, it's a good job, making good money, of a lot of, you can kind of work in your own ways or forms once everything gets done. But there was something like slowly over time I realised I was going out more at the weekends. Like everything was avoidance. Like I was like, couldn't sit in my feelings to save my life. Didn't know it. Didn't fucking breeze. I thought I was so like emotionally intelligent and all this stuff. And I would have been in certain ways, but just the awareness kind of wouldn't be there. Anyway, then ended up in a coaching course thanks to a friend recommending it. He could see, he was like, yeah, you're not yourself. You're kind of like, there's something amiss. But I didn't know what to do. Didn't know how to ask for help, all that stuff. Anyway, walked into the coaching course. Remember walking in the room and just had this like a feeling of like, what would you call it? It was like a knowing. I guess I'd call it a knowing. Because you could have the conversations you always wanted to have, but necessarily didn't know always how to have. And then that brought me into coaching, which I love because it's kind of facilitating one's own knowing through insight, through like knowing. I think that's one thing I love about coaching. The coach isn't the expert. The coach has skill sets and their own way of doing it to facilitate someone else's own insight or awareness of self. So it's lovely because I guess we're so used to, I guess, being inside that there's an expert who can tell you what to do, and if you do it, everything will be fine. Whereas coaching has that beauty, which I think is that we gently over time, in our own way, at our own pace, in the ways that make sense for us, we come to know ourselves through making decisions. Because, for example, if I know that I've made a choice and I go and do it and it doesn't work out, I can be like, oh, it made sense to do it because of this, but now that I've done it, now I understand myself in a way I wouldn't have if I didn't do it. So there's huge learning in that. So there's never a wrong decision. Because you're coming to these awareness yourself. And then on the way, I had experiences when I was younger that you could call mystical experiences, etc. But I never had any, I just never felt, it's not like it was anything harbours that you wanted to go and say to, and you didn't know how to. It just was in there and never came out. And then in 2019, I went to this lady. It was hilarious. How, I don't know how we crossed each other on LinkedIn or something, having a chat on the phone one day. And she goes, we were just chatting. I was like, Breda, I was like, so what kind of a conversation would I be having with somebody whereby you would love for your name to come up? So I asked her, what kind of a conversation would I be having with somebody? So what would we be talking about? Or what challenges or stuff that they would be talking about where you would love for your name to pop into my head? Then she started saying all this stuff and I was like, hang on a second, Brita. I was like, I want to go to you. So I was like, I actually want to go to you. So I went to her then. But then for whatever reason, it's like we spoke about safety earlier on. Your body in some way or form knows whether it's safe to say something. And so it might pop something into your mind. But you'll know it because there's a difference between saying it because you feel like you should fill a space and saying it because, oh, this feels right. There's a kind of a different feeling altogether. I just remember sitting down and she's done different things. She's done coaching, she's done energy, worked with Spirit World as well. And she said, so what would you like? And I was like, well, geez, I'm coached out at this point. I was like, some of the other stuff. And then I'd know wherever it went. And then I spoke about the experience and it was just like, it was like it needed to come out of my body. And as soon as that came out of my body, there was like this tension that I didn't even know was there that left. I was like, yeah, you needed to get that out. And to kind of have an acknowledgement that there was nothing wrong with having that experience, which was massive. So it's like, I think so many of us have kind of different experiences growing up and there can be an unspoken, like it could be an unspoken thing you've picked up on that if you speak about it, you'll be shamed or ridiculed or punished. So I never was told any of those things, but I think it's just in the culture kind of a thing. So, but when I spoke about it that day, I was like, whoa, okay, this is the part of myself that, like I can remember driving into the place. It was a place in Clane, in Kildare, Clane, I think. Clane.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. And even there was this lovely little drive up to our house and just the sense of calmness before it's like the day, there was a part of me knew what was coming. And then I remember going into a coffee shop afterwards and there was just, even the coffee shop, there was loads of space between chairs. There was kind of like the people in the shop were friendly. And I just remember taking out my journal and my pen and writing away, but something was different. I didn't know at the time. Now I know that you have these experiences and it's important that you don't try and figure it out all the time. But I was like, oh, that was important for some reason, and it'll make sense in time. And and then since then, it's just this curiosity for, that those big existential questions. I've always had them, but it's only when I kind of left the nightclub world that a space within me kind of opened up to like, okay, now you're ready. And it was like, okay, where can I have these conversations? Who can I talk to? And it's like, what do they say? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And all these conversations started coming up. And then, so done that master's in applied spirituality, for example, last year. That was flipping huge, bloody Nora. I can tell you the last thing I wanted to do was a master's or an academic. But it just kept coming. And I had an experience out in the house in Barna. And I was questioning, will I do it? Will I not do it? And well, you couldn't have got a clearer kind of, you go do that master's if you had tried. And I was like, okay, I'm doing that master's. I know it scares the living daylights out of me, but I know I'm going to do it. And I made the decision that day and went for it and got accepted, which is amazing. And it was such a, what would you call it? A shake into the bag kind of thing, and kind of shaked up all these beliefs for the purpose of letting them go. And I found out what spirituality is really about as well. It's like, I think I used to think it was, it's amazing, sense of oneness and peace. Whereas spirituality is about looking at all of yourself and all of the world and coming to as much truth as you can about yourself and everything in it. Once again, taking your capacity into consideration. And you just there's a new beauty you see in the world. It was always there. But we have to kind of clear it from ourselves, and then opens up this whole like understanding of whatever spirituality means for you, I guess.
Yeah, and that's so interesting because for me, I read this book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and they get you to sit down and write your values and principles for yourself, for your life. And one of my values was love, and then I wrote down 3 principles for how I would behave if I wanted to live from love, and one of them was see life through a lens of beauty, and then we know that we can create our own meaning for our life. So that was one of mine. So just going back to the coaching aspect of your life and then spirituality, I'll take the coaching first. I can tell from chatting to you and the couple of times that we met that you have a deep, profound understanding of people and of yourself, and your awareness has grown 100-fold since your days working in the events and all of that. For people out there that haven't had a coach yet, they're maybe going for their first session ever as a coach, what would you explain is the process and purpose behind it for a coaching or life coaching, whatever it's called? Because I know there's a lot of definitions between sports coaches and all of that, but for someone on the first level of coming into contact with a coach and deciding, I need a little bit of change, maybe it was recommended by someone, but I'm going to go to Thomas, what would you describe that process to be?
So the process with me is very much so. So I guess I have a very strong belief that I think is fundamentally important, which is there's 8 billion of us in the world. We all have something unique to offer. The whole journey, I guess a lot of it's figuring out what's this one thing. And so when people come to me, for me, it's really important that after they get off the phone, so we will be chatting for half an hour, it'll be whatever it needs to be. It could be 15 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, sometimes it's 40 minutes. But the important thing for me is that I know that I as a coach have an offering, which is not just a skill set, but it's kind of an expression of where I've come in my journey. So there's a space and a capacity I can hold that really resonates with people and they love it. And then there's going to be people who might be listening and it's just be like, and inside them I might be like, I wouldn't feel safe with them. Nothing to do with me, but just there's something inside them that says, I'm not sure, would I be ready, or I'm not sure I would see my style. So the way I work is that they'll reach out and there might be an email. Generally it's a referral through a friend or someone who's come to me or someone it's just come up or whatever it might be. And we'll just have a Zoom call or a phone call. I try to do the Zoom calls because it's nicer because they get a stronger sense of me and I get a stronger sense of them. And just kind of, it's not overly structured, but it's very much so how did you come to be here? Because if someone's on the phone, if they've got to that place of being on the phone and they haven't done it before, there's clearly something inside them that's saying, I need something, I don't know what it is. I need support, I don't know what it should look like. Or I know I want something, but I don't know what I want. So the way I do the calls is that on that phone call, I'll help them get clarity on what it is they want and need. But the way I do it is my style of coaching. So they're essentially getting coaching on the phone call, but it's not too deep because it wouldn't be fair because it's only 30 minutes. So they get a sense of it, and there's always, I guess for me, it's always important that any questions they ask, they have, and if there's something that doesn't come to mind, that they can feel safe to send an email. Because sometimes it might be safer for someone to say something or ask a question in an email that might be too scary to ask in person. And then from there, the way I work at the moment is then we'll agree a time for a first conversation. And the way I work at the moment is like a container. So there's a start and a finish, but it's not rigid. It's going back to the kind of, we all have our essence or flow or patterns, or so it's great because I can bring that into the conversation now. For example, we were meant to meet on Friday, the whatever, but I noticed that 2 days beforehand you cancelled, but you've done that twice. So is that something you'd like to talk about? Because it's you just don't know.
Yeah.
But then it becomes an important part because it's like, yeah, well, I was really afraid of this thing coming up and I thought I should have it done. And I thought that you might be, I don't know, pissed off or something. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So then that becomes something to coach on. But it's always like they get the choice with it because it's always relevant. It's never not relevant, if that makes sense. And more than likely, if there's somewhere they want to move in life, for example, and that's the something that's shown up, with me, it's probably something that they're actually there for that they don't know they're there for. So to feel safe enough to be like, oh my God, every time I want something I care about, I find out some reason and I go running. So then it just becomes a safe space, once again, if they're ready to kind of, okay, so what is that? So why are we here again? And so why do you think we're really here?
Yeah.
And then it's a journey, because every relationship in life, regardless of what it is, has its time. And we need to get to know people in these little ways and feel safe. But we unfold and come in to know things when our awareness is ready for seeing what we need to see.
So, Thomas, I know from what I can tell from you with our conversations this morning and everything, you're in the coaching world, you're doing workshops with Finbar where you're exploring energy, you're going to these circles, like you're up to so many interesting things, like a lot of stuff that I would actually love to do myself. Can you bring us into one of those experiences, like even the circle or what you're doing with Finbar? Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to actually. So this is actually really interesting. So energy is something I've always been interested in without knowing it. For example, when I was choosing secondary schools, where I went to primary school, it was one of these unspoken assumptions that you go to the local school that's all lads. But I walked into the school and within a minute I knew. I was like, I don't know why, but I'm not coming here. And it was just like, for me, there was a coldness. It didn't mean there was a coldness about the place, but for me, my body was telling me, this is cold, so that's a no. And then I just asked my parents, is there anywhere else I could look at going? And so I went to a different school and there was a sense of warmth. Like I walked in, I could feel the warmth and there was a friendliness, and I was like, okay, this feels right. And it was a mixed school. And I was like, oh yeah, that was important for Thomas. And then there's loads of different experiences, but you don't know until someone put words in it sometimes. So then, interestingly, so what was it? It's actually so interesting. Even the way we're sitting here today, like the different people that kind of support us and put us in touch, and coming into the energy world, it was actually a friend when I moved to Galway. There was a friend who sent me Finbar's page and was like, oh, I think you'll get on with this guy. And I sent him a message and then we ended up chatting for like 3.5 hours. It was just like instant like connection. And then he mentioned something. And then I went to a session or two with him and it was like, whoa. It was like this, how would you explain it? It's like there was always a knowing that there was something more out there that you had a capacity for, but you'd never come across it spoken so explicitly with comfort. I was like, oh, that's definitely a part of my journey. And knowing it was. And then started going to the workshops at Hazel for the last 14 or 16 months or something. And gently over time, it was like coming to trust these subtle little knowings, I guess understanding yourself more, dreams more, energy more, trusting your intuition. Trust. I guess a lot of it comes down to trust. And let's see, what's a really good example? For example, as an experience one day I was walking with a friend and I told her a bit about the energy workshops I was doing, as much as my body told me to say. And we were walking along, and at one point she goes, which I never would have expected her to say, she just turns and she goes, Thomas, can you do that energy stuff on me? What was fascinating was 5 minutes before that, my hands started heating up, like really heating up. And I was like, what is this? Because I didn't understand it. So I was like, for me, it was a thing of like, well, it's something that's coming through you. It's not you, and something's going to happen. And you don't know what's going to happen. It's going to happen. So we sat down anyway, and I put my hands on her leg, and afterwards, like, I was thinking about all this, and I was like, that's mad. And she got in touch afterwards to say that everything that had happened as a result of that. So it's like, one thing, I guess the experience of ultimately told me that there's powers guiding us all the time when we learn to listen and discern, and once they're coming from a good place in us. And that's been amazing. It's been huge. Coming back to I know we talked a lot about this morning about the sensitivities, and having experiencing the world through your, I guess, a lot through your sensitivities, which mightn't have ever had a space kind of growing up and stuff. Just do things, or those phrases. You just need to get on with it, get up and go at it, stop complaining, all these things which you become good at doing, and you need to do, because it protects you, it gets you through to a certain point until you're like, okay, I need to come into acceptance of my way of experiencing the world and how I express that. So the energy work has been profoundly so helpful. It's actually so hard to understand. Well, it's not hard to understand when you're in it. You're like, oh, but it's hard to put words on all the time. Or even it comes across in the coaching sometime. I was renting a room in Drumcondra, and there was a lady who'd come in, and that day there was something in the room far beyond me. And it was the energy of the space that's once again come back to safety. It was a safety that was created, that cultivated her to have the insight she had. That wasn't necessarily a question I asked. It was just where it went. And it was like this huge baggage is probably the wrong word, but something that was holding her back for 20 years. And she just saw it just like that. So it comes in so many ways and forms, and it's been hugely nourishing for me, because it's also something that nourishes me, but it's something that I can use to support and nourish others. Which I think, if you think about it, we're all in this dance through life, and we come to say, actually, we're kind of in it together, which is lovely. And then the circle. So when I was doing the masters, you have a spiritual accompanier for 12 months, and you meet, or for 10 months, and you meet them once a month. And that was amazing. Sometimes I'd be sometimes getting caught in the psychology of things, and I'd be always pointed back to kind of the heart of things. And that was like, it's like when you get caught up things trying to figure things. I was like, do it all as you want. You're not going to get too far. So it just brought me back to this center that I've been cultivating with meditation and swimming, and learning to listen to the needs of my body and kind of going with it, as opposed to having to be a certain way. And so since then, or since the course finished, I was like, oh, this is really supportive for me. So I'd meet her once a month or once every 2 months. But every week we have on a Wednesday, we have a circle where it's literally, there's a healing chant. There's a healing chant to begin, then it's meditation for half an hour, another healing chant, and then we discuss something from the Tao Te Ching, like a verse from the Tao Te Ching. And it's lovely. You just see things but everything brings you back to this place kind of inside you. It takes out of your head and into a deeper place. It's like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, so it's bringing you home to yourself, really, I guess. Coaching, spirituality, energy. It's really bringing people home to themselves. So they can learn to, I guess we can learn to acknowledge how we experience the world and the directions we want to move in, and slowly let go of ideas or expectations or shoulds that we might have picked up along the way.
What I love about the language that you used is the use of safety and nourishment and support and space. And we find as well, through Partners in Positivity and the people that we meet outside of the podcast, outside the hiking, is that being that person of safety, full support, non-judgment, that we are cultivating or nourishing people into blossoming, like we nourish seeds and cultivate the land for things to blossom, and that actually we're doing that with humans too. And then we have this beautiful, how would you describe it, experience of seeing someone in their most beautiful form. Like, I know some friends of ours have deep-rooted dreams that they would love to see come to fruition while they're alive, and they're hiding it and hiding it and hiding it, but they show it to us in little glimpses, and we're so grateful for that. You know, that's such a precious thing to witness. So I'm so delighted that you're part of the space in life right now, where with the coaching, with spirituality, with the energy work that you're doing, that you're helping nourishing the people around you. And I can't imagine what you've seen unfold in people, or emerge, as you said earlier, the emergence of the dreams that we have, or, you know, what we were born with to do here. So it's just really fascinating. And you can really actually tell by some of the work that people do when they're in that authentic power. Whether it's a dancer, or whether it's an artist, or whether it's like yourself in your career. Like, we can see from you sitting across from me that this is something that you were here to do and destined to do. And maybe you weren't aware of the coaching industry when you were in secondary school, but, you know, you explored and you figured it out and met the right person, and that all worked out so beautifully for you. So well done. It's been a fantastic experience getting to chat to you today and spend time with you outside of just the recording.
Thomas, I just want to ask you, before we finish, what would be your top 3 tips for someone who wants to be more of their authentic self?
If you want to be more of your authentic self, I think for me, more, if a question's coming from a place of what do I need to do more of, I think it's always, less is always what comes into my mind. So first of all, what do you need less of to create space to see what you already know somewhere inside you that you need to do more of? So there can be this natural, like, I want to be more authentic, so I need to do more to find out what that more is, as opposed to, and I think it's just the culture we're born in. It's like, oh, well, if you want more, you've got to do more. If you want to be more successful, you've got to do more things. When it actually pulls us away from that kind of place we can be as still as we can be to see what we already know that we need. So for 3 tips, I'll say something and then have a question that might be more helpful. So I guess the first question will be, in what way would make sense to you and how you experience the world? In what way could you create space for yourself to slow down enough to see what you already know about yourself? For me, it was always there to love talking to people. It was always there, like even in college, I just loved hearing what people cared about. Like, if someone cared about something they were talking about, I wouldn't care if they were talking about like swans, or like like cups of tea, or like, you know, fingernails. Just, there's an energy that comes through when people are talking about something they care about. And in our lives, we all have experiences where that has showed up. But it, just, I guess, another story, like this, something I guess I had along the way was like this idea, well, if you're going to be good at something, it's going to be really tough. Whereas actually, the tough part is actually trusting yourself enough to go with it, as opposed to the doing of it. When it's for you, it's like, it's, I guess, it's a part of the journey, I guess. So, and, you know, how do we create that space? For some people, it's out in the woods in nature. For some people, space could be at like a gig, just where they forget about everything and they're going nuts. And like, but that's their space. So that's for them. So it's different for different people. And it's, that's important. So as opposed to thinking what it should look like, what do you feel would it be for you? That makes sense. That's one piece. Another question would be, if you're listening to this whole podcast up to this point, something has kept you here for this long. What is it, even in this conversation, that has spoken to you? Like, what is it? Like, what is it? If you couldn't put a word in it, if it was a feeling, what would the feeling be? And where would that feeling bring you to? I guess another lovely one would be like, who are the 3 people that, you know, if you could sit down and have a chat with, you know, who are they? What would you talk about? No, it's a room, you and 3 people. It's locked. or it's open, whatever like feels best for you. But that conversation, you can talk about anything and everything. No one has to know about it, and no one's going to judge you for what you talk about. What would you talk about? Where do you think the conversation would go? If you were talking there for the full hour and they're like, we want to hear you talk for an hour, you can be as comfortable as you want. You can scratch, burp, fart. You can take 10-minute breaks. Just talk for an hour. The space is yours for an hour. Not to talk for an hour, but to make use of the space and whatever you'd like to. What would you talk about? What would you do? Where would you go? And just be curious with it. And see where those 3 kind of guiding questions bring you. And do your best to, it's like that in between worlds space. You know, we live in a world where there's a pressure to have an answer or to have a conclusion, or like this helps me frame things a lot. I'm like, I like for me, I have that belief that we've lived many lives until this point, and that there's a particular journey or purpose to this one that will reveal itself. Or it's probably always there, but we'll come to know what it is when we need to know it. But that idea that we've so many lives and the universe is expanding and evolving the whole time, and that there is no full stop. Mm-hmm. But the idea that there is a full stop holds us back from seeing what's emerging in any moment. Or something that might resonate with people, something that I found really hard when I started out coaching, that there's just there was that, insecurity in myself. So I was like, I thought I have to have a perfect name. So as opposed to Thomas McCormack coaching, it started off with the millennial coach. Oh, that sounds right. That's what the world needs. So I'm going to go to what the world needs as opposed to what I offer. So it's the millennial coach. And I was like, oh, that feels shite. And then I was the authenticity coach. And then I was like, and then I couldn't find Thomas McCormack. I was like, it doesn't even matter actually. So I was like, there it is. But I'm evolving all the time. So it's like, when you put yourself in a box, straight away, it's like forgetting that you are evolving every day. So how can you be with what emerges every day and live in a way that you can hold your identity into whatever you need to feel comfortable in this moment, while also having space for what's unfolding? And I think that's sometimes what makes life challenging and tough and amazing, is that feeling safe enough to be kind of feet on the ground, to be like, this is who I believe I am now, but comfortable enough to let the unknown come in and meet you where you're at too.
That's beautiful, Thomas. And that's one thing I'll really take away from you today, because you reflected back to me that something I said on a previous podcast that I completely forgot about, is about, can you remember what that was?
You were saying about preparing for the podcast, and it was like that uncomfortable feeling or something, but you knew you didn't know it was going up, and that's what made it so good. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, so thanks for actually reminding me of that, because I think as humans we do like to have some idea of what's going to happen, but I do love when I'm in that space where I'm trusting that whatever is going to unfold is going to be okay, and actually being excited about it and curious and in a state of wonder. So I just want to say thanks so much for being here with us today, everything that you've shared. And Sarah has something to say.
Yeah, I totally echo everything that Ash says. And when I was listening to you dish out these wonderful questions for our audience, I recognise that actually we are individual. I just wanted to answer them myself to learn more about myself, And the third question you asked about which 3 people would you sit across from, I couldn't be more joyful in being across from the 2 of you here today. And on top of that, you said, what would we discuss or talk about? And my mind straight away went to this breathtaking view when we came around a corner on the island of Santorini. And then that helped me recognise in myself that travel is one of my values in life. We actually did a test, like a 13-question test, and it was top. But I just want to say for people, and all that you said about the beauty that's out there and how we can choose to see the world through our own lens, that travel and all that is so good for your soul. There's beauty outside and inside. And just to finish, I would highly, highly recommend, if you're listening to this, to stop and pause if you need to take a moment to answer Thomas's questions. And if you need a coach and you resonate with his voice and what he said, please reach out to him. He is on Instagram and he's the Authenticity Coach. There's a few full stops. The dot authenticity dot coach. And that's where you'll find him. And again, Thomas, it's been an absolute pleasure and a dream for us to have our first podcast after a while of not recording with you in Galway and in this beautiful space that we're in, candlelit. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Absolute pleasure. I love chatting. I think I've spent so much of my life being a listener that when I do get a chance to talk, it's like when it feels right, it's like, it's lovely. I think it's been a lovely dance to this conversation. And something else that I thought was so interesting that we said earlier on was, which kind of points to like something bigger even, is that there's two people that are so incremental in us even being here. So there's Emer, our pal Emer. So Emer, so I met Emer through so we mentioned Finbar today. So Finbar put me in touch with Emer. And then myself and Emer were living together in Galway for a long time, and that's where I met you. And then my brother Shane had worked with yourself and Emer, which is hilarious. And then we were looking for a space to record. Eva, who Emer also introduced me to, Eva was like, "Oh yeah," Eva was like, "Yeah, you can use our space." So Eva from Yoga Sadhana, I can't pronounce it right. But just say thanks to those as well. But it shows how we cannot get anywhere without others. So there's people in the space that weren't in the space. So thanks to yourselves and to Eva and Emer and Finbar and, the whole evolution that we can't fully see. But yeah, so thanks very much.
Congratulations, well done. Pat yourself on the back. You're officially now a partner in positivity with us. If this is your first episode, we're so grateful. If this is your 40th episode, we're equally as grateful for your ears, for your heart, for taking this time out for yourself and committing to your own positive mental health journey. Our intention for this podcast is for you to feel a little bit better afterwards. So we hope you take some time now to check in with yourself. How did you feel before? How do you feel now? And we've definitely done our job if you feel a little bit better, and especially if you want to come back for more next week. If you do want to support us, we actually have a Ko-fi donation page. It's ko-fi.com/partners in positivity. We really value the work that we're doing. We know there's so much positive and negative in the world, and we want to contribute to people feeling their best. So we appreciate all of the donations we've had so far and welcome any more that are on the way. Thank you in advance. Also, if you got something of value from this and you want to share with friends or family to add to this trend of positivity in the world, we would love to be tagged in any posts on social media. You know where to find us. Other than that, guys, have an incredible week ahead, and we look forward to feeding you some more nourishment for that beautiful mind, that beautiful garden of yours next week.